Welcome to Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and today on the show we have Brazil showing why it is a reflection of American politics. It's a great way to know what we look like from afar. Also, a viewer comment regarding that. Really, really instructive, actually. I'd like to use it as an example and to also thank them for their comment. Also, Dana Nessel heard us. That is the Michigan Attorney General. We've talked on this show multiple times about why she chose to not investigate the Michigan fake electors plot, which was particularly obnoxious. I don't know why I always use that word, particularly. It is difficult to say, and I'm not ever sure that I've said it correctly. But yes, we talked about contacting these people. I have an example of the the email I sent her following this news. Then, of course, Scott Perry. He is refusing to recuse himself from an investigation that he is a major factor in. Blatant corruption, of course, which, of course, we talked about on the show. Which brings me to a larger point to start off the show. This Wicked, What You Can Do, follows apparently a guy with nasal problems. Oi. Follows, news and politics. And for that reason, a lot of times the episodes seem like they would have a quick expiration date on them, right? Usually you will find things we talk about in one show become relevant a few days later, a few weeks later, even a few months later. A lot of times, this show is going to seem like Babe Ruth calling the shot and then hitting it. It ain't magic, though. It's just following the implications of the news. When you break down the language people are using in their coverage, and you sort out what is wishy-washy language, and you sort out what they are really saying, it's not hard to make the connection to a story that is developing down the line. We have that happen frequently. I'm going to try to point it out and provide links to previous episodes where I can, and you will see a whole new level of context for the events of the day. But let's get right to it. Right now, as we speak, is Brazil's Jan 6th. They had a far right-wing authoritarian wannabe dictator in the form of Jair Bolsonaro. My God, Bolsonaro. In fact, the parallels are wild. Their far right authoritarian also went to Florida in the U.S. after getting booted out of office. He also questioned the legitimacy of the election without reason, without cause, other than to keep himself in office. Here is what that resulted in.
Eu sou repórter experiente na cobertura de conflitos, é horror isso daí. Nunca tivemos.
Now, obviously, that's in Portuguese. But here's the scene, folks. This is the aftermath of their version of J6. I don't know how long ago. When it'd be January 1st. So when Bolsonaro was booted out, Lula took his place. Lula is significantly farther left than Joe Biden. I wouldn't exactly call him as left as the right will say he is, as frankly no one is. But he's closer to a Bernie Sanders than a Joe Biden, if you're looking for an equivalency. When he got out of office the first time, the far right in his country tossed him in prison. A legal battle ensued. He got out. Then he got elected. He was sworn in on January 1st, so here's our first difference from the, you can see the aftermath here. You can see how the rioters trashed the centers of power in Brazil. But when when Lula got elected, Bolsonaro did the usual, what is becoming the usual right-winger playbook. Said it was a fake election, yada yada, fraud, blah 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 blah. Well, the scene looked almost identical to what happened in the USA. We had a commenter. We had a commenter the other day say we don't want America to become like Brazil. It's more accurate, I would say, with respect, to say that Brazil is becoming more like America in all the worst ways. We have a lot of similarities to Brazil currently. In fact, I would say Brazil, in terms of how its politics works, is like America's twin brother that sometimes gets mistaken for it. A lot of similarities. The main difference you have is simply the size of the country and the speed at which things move, because it is a smaller country. So, here's what happened today. And I'm sure we're going to find out that Russia had a hand in this, and probably forces in the U.S. had a hand in this. But a bunch of people, see if you can count the similarities, a bunch of people believing a lie that a far right-wing politician told about the election showed up at the seats of power in Brazil. There's 3 buildings. I'm sorry, I don't know their names, and I don't want to pooch it. But 3 buildings with where the government is centered in Brazil had a giant protest, which ended up turning into a riot. They stormed in. They messed the places up, as you're seeing here on CNN Brazil's coverage of this. I believe I've put the link to that in the description. If you speak Portuguese, you'll get some benefit from that. If not, at the very least, look at that. You can see how alike this looks. I think if you're hearing that popping, I think that's the sound of the cameraman walking on glass, or whoever's got the phone there, walking on the broken glass. That's not unlike, what you're seeing there is not unlike what our Capitol building looked like. So they were draped, a lot of these folks were wearing what would be in Brazil patriotic colors, the colors of their flag. And the police response to it was weak, because these were right-wingers gathering. When left-wingers gather, the police response is brutal. They are ready to crack heads right away. Right-wingers gather, well, police say let them do what they're going to do. Here's where it differs. Number 1, Brazil already got to see this happen once when it happened in the U.S. Number 2, Lula is he was an organizer of workers' movements to start his career, at least in politics. He's a socialist. He's farther left-wing, which means he's more of a realist. He had an actually strong response. The largest news network in Brazil right away called this a terrorist attack. Right away. While it was happening, the largest news network in Brazil called this a terrorist attack. It took our major networks. Let's set Fox aside. We know that's simply propaganda for right-wing extremists. Our networks, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, etc., etc., they took months to start calling this the January 6th, the terrorist attack. They took a very long time. I was working in corporate media. And I remember the debates we had over this. And it aged me to have to say, what is terrorism? Terrorism is the threat of violence to achieve a political means. This is definitionally terrorism. Why are we still talking about this? It made me crazy. But there's such hesitation in this industry, in America, well, frankly, around the world, but specifically in America, to call anyone associated with the right wing anything bad ever, and to cover for them by default, to downplay their villainy by default. It's not to say there's no villainy amongst Democrats. There certainly is. But it's called what it is straight away, or worse, when it's a lefty doing it. This is normally when I'd say let's listen to the person, but I'm presuming most of you don't speak Portuguese. Okay. Ministro da Justica. I can assume that we are now hearing from the official in charge of justice. Oh, let me just...
Muito grave.
Yeah, so I won't get anything out of this. I do apologize. But I wanted to show you that so that you could see a bit of the aftermath. But don't worry, we also have an article about this that I'd like to look at. Because look, I'm saying it matches America's January 6th riot so much. And okay, in a lot of the political ways it does, but it's not like they had the QAnon shaman there running around. Okay, well, turns out that is exactly what they had. That's from an earlier protest against Lula, inspired by Bolsonaro. The parallels are wild. I left a link in the description for when we saw Bolsonaro's swearing-in ceremony. I gave a little background on Lula's swearing-in ceremony. I gave a little background on who he is. And at the time, I said, this is a great country to look at for examining what America is up to, what American politics looks like. If you want to know what it looks like from afar, a great way to see that is looking at Brazil. There are indeed a ton of similarities, including the consequences of inaction. Fortunately, let me tell you this: Lula has, and I'm hearing like a grinding. I'm not sure what that is. Hopefully, it doesn't appear on the stream, and I apologize if it does. Lula immediately said, "Everyone who participated will be held accountable, including the police who failed to act." In other words, Lula's not putting up with this nonsense. And we, in the U.S., should take a page out of that book. I have great news on that front in the coming segments. But first, let's have a look at what happened. This is a story from the AP. Y'all hear that? Oh, well. Supporters of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, good God, who refused to accept his election defeat, stormed Congress, the Supreme Court, and presidential palace in the capital on Sunday, a week after the inauguration of his leftist rival, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, or Lula for short. It's like a nickname he has. Thousands of demonstrators bypassed security barricades. Doesn't that sound familiar? Climbed on roofs. Doesn't that sound familiar? Broke windows and invaded all three buildings. Doesn't that sound familiar? Which are connected by the vast Three Powers Square in Brasilia. Some called for a military intervention to either restore the far-right Bolsonaro to power or oust Lula from the presidency. Sort of the same thing, but fair enough. About 5:30 p.m. local time, less than 3 hours after the storming. Remember, it took us longer to get this under control. The U.S., who pours money into law enforcement, who pours money into the military, took us longer to get ours under control. To be fair, this was after Lula was sworn into office, which means Lula was the ultimate controller of these things. It tells you a bit about Trump's intentions. Why did it take so long for us to get a response? Indeed. We ought to talk about that in a court of law. The incidents recalled the January 6, 2021 assault on the U.S. Capitol by supporters of then-President Donald Trump. Political analysts have warned for months that a similar storming was a possibility in Brazil, given that Bolsonaro has sown doubt about the reliability of the nation's electronic voting system without any evidence. Boy, does that not sound familiar. The results were recognized as legitimate by politicians from across the spectrum, as well as dozens of foreign governments. So, folks, there ain't a lot of mystery here. We've seen this before. We know what this is. This is a coup. It's an attempt at a coup. If it's clear there, it ought to be clear here. Let's see how long it takes the Brazilian government to actually file charges against Jair Bolsonaro. Let's see how long it takes the Brazilian government to get this done. I have a feeling they may have filed charges before we do. Think about how embarrassing that will be. They may have the situation develop, deal with it, and then handle it in the courts before we even file charges against Donald Trump. Be on the lookout. Watch Brazil if you want to know what America looks like and what America can look like. The farther left you go, the more effective governance you get. Lula is left of Biden. We are likely to see an actual satisfactory response to this. We have, on a related note, we have an attorney general in Michigan who I've talked about multiple times. I often use Michigan as an example because it is a purple state with a left-leaning government at the moment, a left-leaning state government, which is a pretty good microcosm for what the nation's going through. I also know it a little bit better because this is where I did local reporting for a while. The Attorney General is Dana Nessel. One of my major criticisms of her was that when Michigan had fake electors try to sneak into the Capitol building to illegally replace the actual electors' submission or submitted electoral votes with a forged document from the fake electors, AG Nessel handed that investigation off to federal authorities. I talked about that specifically on this channel. It was a major disappointment for me. It was one of the main things that I did not like about Nessel. And I wrote her about it. I wrote her as a local news reporter, asking questions and getting the boilerplate answers. I wrote her as a citizen of Michigan. as I encourage you guys to do in your own states. Write the people who you think are letting you down and tell them why you think they're letting you down. Well, it seems she's heard us. It seems a couple other folks were doing the same thing. It doesn't take that many, by the way. 5 or 10 people can make the difference. It sounds like too few, but that is how little engagement we have in this level on politics. We just started getting left-wingers to regularly vote. Believe it or not, 15 years ago, it was the hardest thing in the world to get a young person to show up to the voting booth, to get somebody who believes in progressive politics to show up on election day. It was very difficult. Now, that's a comparatively active group of voters in America. Excellent. But we have yet to master this next part, which is contacting our representatives. We don't have to wait 2 years to shift politics in the country. Every day you have an opportunity. Dana Nessel has now, I don't even want to say changed her tune. She's adjusted course. She has seen the same thing that we have seen, apparently. Perhaps she was made to see it by the campaign that's been going on to contact her and say, God damn it, do your job. Because here she is on MSNBC with an announcement about investigating the state elector plot in Michigan. And your AG can do this too if you are from a state that had such a plot. Here it is.
Let me ask you about your state for a moment. On Friday, you reopened an investigation into the 16 Republican electors who falsely claimed that Donald Trump won Michigan in the 2020 election, citing new evidence released by the January 6th committee. Michigan GOP co-chair Michon Maddock has already basically outlined their plan to submit these alternate electors. Your reaction to that, and talk to us about how you came to the decision to reopen this investigation. What was specifically the new evidence that compelled you to do so?
Well, look, there has been a mountain of evidence in this case, honestly, since the very beginning. We referred it, along with many other state AGs in swing states, to the federal authorities.
Wait a minute. Let me just highlight that point for a moment. He just said, all right, you reopened this case. You had paused the state case on the fake electors plot in Michigan. You just reopened it. What new evidence caused you to reopen it? The assumption being something has changed. Dana Nessel gave an answer that reminded me why I like her. Why I've been wanting to be a fan of hers. She just said no new evidence. Time has passed. It's what we've been railing against on this channel. Look at the description for the last live stream that I did, the full show. It's just, it's the Trump charges one. It's just a list of all the things we know Trump did that we've yet to get any resolution on. Yeah, she's got a fantastic point. The federal government is dragging its feet. The federal government has done a pathetic job of holding the insurrectionists accountable. And frankly, justice delayed is justice denied. We're already dealing with the consequences. People that helped plot January 6th, or at least people that appeared to have helped plot January 6th, are still in office. Scott Perry, still in office. Matt Gaetz, still in office. Marjorie Taylor Greene, still in office. Lauren Boebert, still in office. People who are election deniers have been elected. Why? Because the American people see that there was a serious accusation from the left, supposedly the left, from frankly, what would have been considered the average politician, what feels like a million years ago in 2015. And they've seen the DOJ not make any arrests of politicians. What are they supposed to infer from that? That it's just one political party making a lot of noise. So quite correctly here, Dana Nessel, bad motherfucker, who I respect, has just said there hasn't been a change, at least in the first part of her answer here, other than too much time has gone by. Bear in mind, I was riding her butt about this phrasing. I was pushing her on this back when I was a local newsman. I've had a career change since then. I've begun to build a YouTube channel since then. By the way, greatly appreciate a like and subscribe. That much time has passed that I got tired of waiting and was trying to ask that gal about it. Add on a year, and she's arrived at the same conclusion.
Authorities and, the Department of Justice, I assume, is continuing to investigate. But we're really at a point where it's hard to make sense of why, with this, evidence that we see each and every day and that has been presented by the January 6th committee, why we wouldn't charge under state law when we have the evidence to do so. And the law supports those charges. And obviously, the federal authorities, I'm certain, will continue to move forward. But, the way I see it is here in the state of Michigan, it's a 14-year felony to pass a bad check. Every day in my department, we issue charges of, welfare fraud and unemployment insurance fraud for things that are so relatively minor compared to the offense of attempting to use a document to overturn a presidential election where over 5.5 million people voted in our state. And it's really hard for me to explain to my constituents.
This mother effer spittin'. Absolutely. Bam, bam, bam. Also note, she talked about right away what is publicly known. Again, something we harp on constantly on this channel because the repetition is necessary. It's got to stick in your mind. We can't just let it become background noise. What is publicly known right now is enough to justify serious investigations into these people. Some of what is publicly known is enough to charge. Just what's publicly known, what happened in front of cameras, is enough to charge. So they're going to do an investigation. They're going to dot their I's and cross their T's, but she's spitting. Don't let me stop it. Let's keep hearing.
And it's hard for me to reconcile personally why it is that if you have enough money and influence and power, that you can get away with just about any crime. I don't think that that's a good policy. And I don't think it's what the people who elected me to office want to see. And that's why I think it's time to move forward on this matter and to, resume our investigation.
That is the song I like to hear. Yes, Dana Nessel. This lady, Attorney General Dana Nessel, has just been moved up significantly in my book. She's always had takes like this. I hate it. I felt frankly let down that she did not pursue these state charges against the fake electors. I saw that as a cop-out, frankly, and said as much. But you got to give credit where it's due. I'd like to show you what you can do, by the way. I tell you all the time what you can do when a politician or the Attorney General, someone in the Justice Department, does not live up to your expectations. When they do live up to your expectations, however, you should let them know as well. I'm going to cut off some doxing information that I've accidentally put on here, but here's the letter I wrote her, the email. I wrote her earlier today. Thank you for reopening fake electors case. Thank you for reopening the investigation into Michigan fake electors. Frankly, I had been losing let me read my full email here. Thank you for reopening the investigation to Michigan's fake electors. I was critical of you when you put your faith in the federal government to seek charges, and I am glad to see that you two have now recognized that justice delayed is justice denied. You have my complete support as a Michigander, and I look forward to a speedy prosecution of the people who tried to deny the value of my vote. Signed, your old pal Jake from Williamston. Tell them when they're doing good. Support them when they're doing good, just like we say to support them when they are letting you down. The value of this is that you will continue to see politicians, and those in the Justice Department doing things that you want them to do. It's that simple. We talk about echo chambers a lot, right? Oh, I hate when people say right rhetorically. Ugh. We talk about echo chambers in the media all the time. If you are in politics, you are entering into a right-wing echo chamber because right-wingers contact their politicians. They contact the Justice Department. Right-wingers don't hesitate to do this. People on the left need to start. We need to get rid of that echo chamber. We need to make our numbers known because we vastly outnumber the people in this country that want to see harm done to it. But it's hard to know that when you are in this game, when you're a politician, when you are in the Justice Department, because who do you hear from? Crazy right-wingers. And it's easy to think that's the majority of the country. It's easy to think that's the majority of the voters in the country. Ultimately, they do want to represent, particularly, the great irony, people on the left have principles, which means they are more likely to think, well, even if I don't personally believe in something, it looks like my constituents do, and I'm here to represent them. So if they only hear from right-wingers, guess what they're going to do? In this hypothetical, for perfectly justifiable reasons. It's our job, your job, my job. Citizens of the country, it is our job to make our voices heard. We can do that without leaving our chair. You can send a 2-sentence email. It's that simple. You Google the person you're looking for and the word contact, you will find quite easily their contact information. Take advantage of that. It seems to have worked in the state of Michigan with the Attorney General. There was a grassroots effort. To get those state charges filed and not wait for Merrick Garland, the world's most well-known coward, to get to work. Awesome. You'll love to see it. Dana Nessel, congratulations. You did the right thing here. And for those of you wondering what her character is like, how effective she is as an attorney general at putting together a team of prosecutors and seeing something through, this is the gal that caught the Wolverine Watchmen, who were going to try to kidnap the governor of Michigan and kill her. She prevented that, and she got actual serious charges filed, and she got convictions. 16 years for the leader, I believe. 19.5 for one of the more insane members. That's Adam Fox, the leader. Barry Croft, the guy that got 19.5 years. I don't remember what Adam Concerta got, but she got actual prison sentences for terrorists. Now, I've been growing up hearing about the Michigan militias all the time, and I've been always baffled why they don't get arrested. Dana Nessel knows her business. This bodes very well for actually seeing justice in the United States of America. Donald Trump may be named directly. I know that seems crazy. Of course, why wouldn't he be? Who are they doing this fake elector plot for? I don't have that much faith. But I do know that of those who are currently operating the United States of America, Dana Nessel's one of the best. All right. Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania's 10th. We talked about him on the show. He is one of those who I believe should already be in a jail cell awaiting trial, at the very least, if not already tried and serving a lengthy prison sentence. Well, Merrick Garland didn't do his job on this, and here is the consequences. From ABC News, Representative Scott Perry, a Republican from Pennsylvania, would not commit on Sunday to recusing himself from a possible House GOP investigation of the Justice Department's January 6th investigation, even though federal investigators have looked at his role in the larger effort leading up to the insurrection and had previously seized the man's cell phone. Remember, we talk about how much defense the Justice Department runs for conservatives. Imagine how bad something has to be for them to seize a conservative politician's cell phone. Why should I be limited? Perry said, obnoxiously. Why should anybody be limited just because someone has made an accusation? Well, because the Justice Department is investigating you. Everybody in America is innocent until proven otherwise, Perry told ABC This Week anchor George Stephanopoulos. I can answer a couple of those right off the bat with just one answer, because it really does look like you were involved, Scott Perry. It really looks like you were involved. And this, at the very least, has the appearance of corruption. And frankly, it is corruption. On Monday, Republicans will vote to approve a package of rules governing the 118th House of Representatives that would establish a new panel to investigate what they call the weaponization of the federal government. Remember, I told you, the purpose of these committees that the MAGA extremists are now going to put together is to make the January 6th committee look like it was simply political. That's all they're trying to accomplish. They don't expect to get any charges filed or anything done, really, other than to diffuse the effectiveness of the January 6th committee. That's all they are trying to do. Because both will make a lot of headlines, and so far, it appears that neither will result in a conviction or charges filed. You can't count the charges against the rioters. Those aren't people in politics. Those aren't going to matter. MAGA will just say, "Oh, that was Antifa." It's that simplistic for them. If approved, the rules package would give the Special Judiciary Subcommittee broad authority to investigate how many parts of the federal government gathers and analyzes information about Americans, including ongoing criminal investigations. So, including an investigation into Scott Perry. And Scott Perry asked obnoxiously, "Why should I be limited?" The answer, Scott Perry, is because there is an ongoing criminal investigation into what you're doing. Right-wingers have no ethics. Right-wing politicians have no ethics, no morals whatsoever. According to the article, Democrats contend those provisions could be used to determine sensitive law enforcement investigations, such as the one into former President Donald Trump and the January 6th Capitol attack, in direct conflict with longstanding policy that the Justice Department does not share information with Congress related to ongoing investigations. Do note, the January 6th committee did all their own work. In fact, a lot of what they found appeared to have been a revelation to the Justice Department. They found new information, which the Justice Department asked for. It tells you how serious the Justice Department was about investigating the people that actually caused this. They are too pleased to go after poor people that look like crazies. But right-wingers who actually organize this thing, nope, no interest. The rules would also grant the special panel access to the same highly sensitive classified information provided only to the House Intelligence Committee. Let me tell you, let me ask you, does it sound like a good idea to have them get a list of the people they need to pressure, of the people they need to threaten, to stop investigations, of the people they need to manipulate? We should have had charges filed already. This is part of the reason why. I suspect Merrick Garland hopes there is interference from right-wingers so he can blame his cowardice on that. Merrick Garland has no interest in doing his job. Let's have a look at who Scott Perry really is. Perry has said he believes that election security was compromised in 2020 despite no evidence of widespread fraud. By the way, the cases of fraud we have seen have largely been Trump supporters. We've had Trump supporters voting twice. We had Trump supporters voting with dead family members' names. We've had Trump supporters, wildly unethical Trump supporters, engaging in voter fraud. Sure. You really don't see people on the left doing that. He said his phone was seized by the FBI, again, because there is an active investigation into him, in August, but his attorney said the Department of Justice said he wasn't the target of their investigation. I'm sure they did. Perry sued to stop the DOJ from accessing the contents of his phone and separately refused a request for his records from the recently ended House January 6th committee, but he met with the committee along with his attorney in November 2021 after being subpoenaed. So let me be clear. There may not be a file somewhere that says this is the investigation into Scott Perry, but he is a part of their investigation. As long as he is a part of their investigation, they could choose to focus the investigation on him. He could become a target. Understand that if he is on a committee deciding whether or not the Justice Department has any power, that's going to affect that. He is not going to say, yeah, you should investigate me. That sounds good. That sounds like the right thing to do. So remember that if you want an example of who they might be investigating, when we did that coverage of Raw News and Politics talking about Scott Perry, we talked about the two Texas businessmen who appeared to have been some of the orchestrators of the fake electors plot, as we see that AG Nessel is now looking into from the Michigan side of things. Well, those two Texas businessmen were contacts of Scott Perry. He had an existing relationship with them. Lord knows how corrupt that was, but he has an existing relationship with them. It is likely that that is the connection. Watch this space. We're going to keep following it. I got to give credit again to Raw News and Politics. If I didn't include that link in the live stream, I certainly will in the re-upload. She did a fantastic look into the January 6th transcripts and the Scott Perry connection there. He appears to be one of the major orchestrators. He absolutely must be investigated. And certainly, he cannot be on a committee, or rather, he should not be on a committee, in charge of determining whether or not the Justice Department is allowed to investigate these people or has abused its power in investigating these people. Of course he can't. Anyone with a shred of ethics wouldn't even consider such a thing. Well, guess what? Link in the description. If you feel strongly about this, tell the Justice Department. Tell them it's time to file charges. It's time to do their job. It's been years. We have a massive list of Republican corruption, of Republican criminality that is still unaccounted for. I'm delighted to see that the Michigan Attorney General is taking this seriously. We're likely going to talk about this again because I want to do a more in-depth breakdown of what you can do and what you can say to your state's Attorney General to get this done. I also wanted to say, didn't even have a chance to talk about a wonderful suggestion from a commenter saying that people should print voting records of their representatives and distribute them in their district. We're going to get into stuff like that, but it's a one-man band over here, so there's a finite amount of hours in the day. And if you were watching my earlier live stream, you will know that occasionally we also have technical problems. So, I'm trying to build this channel. If you enjoy this content, if you think it has value, if there's value to you in having workable, realistic plans for what you can do about news, politics, the issues that matter to you, consider liking, consider subscribing. It's massively beneficial to me. It keeps leftist content popular online, which increases the odds that leftist policy will get made and that we will have justice in the United States of America for once. It's been good developments. Lula is not taking this nonsense from insurrectionists in Brazil. Be on the lookout for how that might be an example of how America could play out. Watch for developments there, and also watch the speed at which they are able to hold the organizers of their version of J6 accountable. Watch them for that. Dana Nessel, reopening the state investigation. Excellent. Scott Perry, openly showing how corrupt he is. It's coming to a head in a good way. People are learning how America works and how America doesn't work. Likes and subscribes are appreciated, and thank you for joining me today on Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.